here. It means so much. This is just amazing to see. It means so much to me, so thank you. All right, I have a couple things to say. The world was sick much before coronavirus ravaged its way across the globe. Indifference and complacency are a pandemic that has been plaguing us much longer than the current one and will likely outlive it. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of humanity. A statement as such sums up so much of what is wrong with the world. Our failure to see struggles other than our own as a priority is much of the reason we are standing here today. The world is facing an impeccable compassion famine. The first time I remember truly understanding the weight of police brutality was the death of Michael Brown. The halls of my high school were a war zone with my peers, who never failed to tell me the many petty crimes he may or may not have committed. I cried tears of anger, trying desperately to get someone, anyone, to find it in themselves to exercise compassion and realize the invalidity of these arguments, as none of them justified the unnecessary murder of a black man. When it came around, unfortunately, to George Floyd, more people at this point seemed to agree that he was unjustly killed, but couldn't seem to stray their focus from the looting and rioting. It was somewhat understandable why they're upset, but the group of people they were upset with was confusing, criminalizing the victims rather than the murderer. I knew the protests were potentially dangerous situations. I wanted to be involved, but I didn't want to put myself in harm's way. So when I was offered a position to speak, I was hesitant, to say the least. I thought, if I accept this, it will be the scariest thing I've ever done. Let us observe the world in all its current ruin. We see protesters being hit by cars and shot with rubber bullets. We see children being tear gassed. We see the similarities between the protests currently taking place and the civil rights protests in the 60s, which reveal to us just how little progress we've made. More than anything, we see these victims of police brutality, and in them are brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, daughters and sons, and we see ourselves. And to this, I revised my thought. This will not be the scariest thing I've ever done. This will be the scariest thing I've ever had to do. Woo! Because this, thank you. Because this was something I must do. I wonder how Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, and the many courageous people of color throughout the years managed to speak out and take action unafraid. And then I thought, how silly. Of course they were scared. They must have been terrified. How could they not be? When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on that bus, there's no way she was not afraid. That every time Dr. King faced a group of people similar to the one I am facing now, that he did not fear for his life. So maybe having courage is not about not being scared. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. Not the scariest thing we could do, but the scariest thing we must do. Because the fear of a future without change is far scarier than the unknown fears of the present. There are many things people fail to understand about the Black Lives Matter movement. The most common misconception is that this movement somehow invalidates the issues of the people outside of it, which is entirely false. It is not to disparage the experiences of others, never to say that your struggles pale in the face of ours, but to emphasize the oppression we experience on a daily basis.